Hello and welcome back to OC Aviary. Today's video we're going to be looking at how to get your birds fitter for the breeding season. We're going to be moving some of the birds into the flight, and we're going to be giving some of the mule and hybrid pairs much larger flight cages and into their own flights as well. So we're going to take a look at all of them. We're getting all the sheds cleaned down. We've got this shed clean, we've got the flights outside cleaned down, and the other shed as well. And then also we welcome some new birds to the bird room. So please enjoy this video. Let's go. So if you remember, in around November sort of time, we wrapped all the flights in plastic. I've so far just taken off here just for the cross bills so that they get a little bit more fresh air, they can come to the front a little more. But for the rest of the flights, they've been wrapped like this since November. So the reason for that was just to keep the draft out away from the birds so that they aren't battered by it and the winter isn't as rough and tough for them as it would be for the wild birds, because we want to get really minimal losses. Obviously they do get the colder temperatures, but a draft can really finish off a bird. So to start off with getting them fit and actually just making them more hardy for the breeding season, I'm going to take off all of the plastic now from the flights. All the birds can come to the front quite easily, get loads of fresh air through. They already get it through the top because I've got a ventilation system through the top, but at least through the front they get plenty of airflow and they get a little bit more weather as well, which is going to help condition them for the breeding season and actually get them fit. That's all of the flights unwrapped now. The bags which I took off were actually designed for transporting koi. So they're quite durable, quite strong and long-lasting bags, and they can obviously take a lot of weight with just having them with full of water with koi in. But what works really nicely with them is that they're weatherproof, obviously, and they're also see-through, so you get all of the light coming through, but you don't get the weather. But now we've taken all that off, so the birds can all come to the front. Plenty of fresh air, we can watch the birds all from the front and obviously film them for you guys. So that'll work really nicely and help get the birds fit, just with actually getting the more fresh air flow through there, a bit more weathering, and really just the next step towards the conditioning period and the breeding season. With the flights now unwrapped, I'm going to give the whole floor a complete clean down. Obviously I do brush it out about once every 2 weeks just to remove any seed, but there's obviously little bits of bits I've missed at the fronts, at least underneath where these perches are, so that shouldn't take too long. I'll just be removing all the food and the water, moving that all out, giving it a good brush. I'll be taking down these big logs as well and giving them a clean down. And then same for here. I'm not going to do the crossbill flights simply because they're breeding at the moment, at least in a sort of stage coming towards it. We haven't got any nests yet, but the pairs have been picking up. And at least looking at the nest sites, but I think we might have a few more weeks yet. But at least with the milder weather now, we have all the flights unwrapped. It's going to be about 10 degrees from now on, at least I've seen on the forecast over the next week or so. So clean the floors is the next job, and remove any debris that's going to get in the way, and we can put a few more perches up and different things that are going to help get them fit. So after about an hour and a half of effort, I've cleaned down all of the AstroTurf now underneath. So we've got no debris on there. We've got some fresh water for the birds, the feeding pot at the back, and obviously we've got the two either side. We come to the hens here, we have the same, so all of this is cleared. I've cleaned down the perches, we've got a fresh water there, the feeders there and a feeding pot down there. And then as it goes for the crossbills, I've just gone in their flight and just changed the waters. I obviously change them every week, if not a little bit more frequently. It depends how messy they are, because sometimes they can be more messy than others. So that is all of the flights now cleaned. So I'll just give you a quick run through of the birds that are currently in here to give you a better idea of what's then going in. So in here we have a red poll mule, a siskin mule, 4 greenfinch cocks, 2 Norwich cocks, a satinette cock, a yellow mosaic cock, and 2 of the new cock birds in. We also have a chaffinch cock, which will be going to a new home relatively soon. This is 8 feet back, 4 feet wide and 6 feet high. We come to the hens in here. We have 4 greenfinch hens, 3 normals and 1 agate. We have 2 Norwich hens, a blue, an allied blue, and a ticked hen. And then we have a yellow mosaic hen, we have a satinette hen, and then we have 3 of the new canaries. We have 1 up the top, a fawn, and then we have 2 clears down below. Then we come to this. So this is probably my better pair of crossbills. We have a 2020 cock and a 2019 hen. The 2019 hen bred for me that last year. The cockbird does have a potential to carry pied, but we'll have to see what happens there because it hasn't been trialled a lot, but I do know his ancestors have came out pied. As it goes for then this pair, this is more, this is not the best pair. I have a 2018 crossbill hen with a 2019 crossbill cock. I bred both of these last year, just not together. So hopefully we'll see some action in these guys over the next few weeks. These guys have been in here over the winter, so these guys are as fit as possible now. We have about 5 to 6 feet of space in between this front perch and the back perch. Same for this pair, same for these guys, and roughly about the same for these, all these cockbirds in here. So whilst we're on the topic of perches and how to place them to get the birds fit, I'd like to show you a quick, a small scale example of where this comes in use and how you can get your birds fitter in the same space area. So I'm going to use this cage front as an example. If we have 2 perches and we place 1 single perch here and the other perch here, that is substantial enough for some birds to get fit. But you can get your birds fitter by placing the perches slightly differently. If you get your first perch and you move that down lower, and you get the other perch and move that down higher, like that, the bird can get fitter exercising and flying like that. Because not only is the bird travelling the distance to and fro, side to side, it's also having to use more muscles to fly up. So that is what I've tried to replicate in some of these cages. I have all of the hens, they have 2 different levels of perches, so they can fly up and side across, so it's quite well, works for getting them fit like that. I do that for all the red polecocks, try and lower some perches and get them flying differently. And then actually in the flight, I'm always putting perches at different heights. I have perches lower down and perches higher up, so the birds can go to lower perches and up to the higher perches to get them fitter. Whilst cleaning out the flight, I also added some pine branches into the flights for the birds to actually chew on. It's good for the birds that they get to eat all of the little pine needles. There's lots of resin in there and they enjoy that, and so some people believe that helps bring them into condition. I'm going to try it this year. I haven't really tried it before, so we'll have to see what happens with that. And it also keeps the birds active. They're hanging up and down, they're pulling at the little pine needles and the different like leaves on there, and they just really enjoy it. So it's another way to get your birds fit and actually get them sort of doing acrobatic moves, if you will. Especially some of the smaller finches like the siskins, the red poles, the goldfinches, hanging onto those branches and leaves and pulling at the twigs basically. So it's a really good way to get your birds fit as well. So now we're going to move some of the birds which have been in cages over the winter into the flight. So we're going to start off with 2 siskin cocks. We have a 2018 siskin cock in here and a 2019 siskin cock in here. The 18 cock I bred the siskin mules from with a satinette hen, and the 2019 cock we bred 4 young siskins from, 2 cocks, 2 hens. We've got 2 of his youngsters there. We have another youngster down here with the red pole, and then we have the best hen which came from him in the other shed with the red poles. So the first things we're going to move is the siskin cocks, and they're going to be going in the 8x4 flight with the rest of the cockbirds. The next birds to go out into the flight will be the bullfinch cock, the Siberian bullfinch cock, which is in here, and the Siberian goldfinch cock. They're both in here. We've got the pair of Siberian bullfinches and the trio of Siberian goldfinches in this flight cage. So we're going to move the two cockbirds out now, and they're going to go into the flight as well. So the last birds that we're going to move into the outdoor flight are actually the hens. So we have one Siberian bullfinch hen and two Siberian goldfinch hens. They've been in here all winter. It's a 7.5 foot long flight, so it's a good size, and they obviously are keeping fit from that. But we're going to move them into the flights as well with the greenfinch hens and the canary hens. As it goes for the siskin hens, they're staying in with the redpoll hens. They get on just fine. They actually in the wild winter in flocks together. So they get on just fine, no problem, and they're in quite good sized cages as well. So we're going to catch these guys up and get them out to the flights. So with most of the birds now moved into the flights, we obviously moved the Siberian goldfinches into the flights and the Siberian bullfinches from here. So all that we have left in here is a spare pair of siskins, which will be going to a new home relatively soon. We have a greenfinch mule pair, a siskin redpoll hybrid pair, and the goldfinch mule pair. So the plan is I'm now going to give all of these cages a deep clean. I'm going to get all these pairs into show cages, move them out of the way. Each cage is going to get a really good clean down. I'm going to clean down the flight below, and then we're going to move these hybrid pairs and mule pairs into larger cages to get fitter for the breeding season, and hopefully we'll push the bonding forward another step with being in a larger cage. So now I've cleaned all of the cages out. We have all of these all fresh, deep cleaned. I've given all of them a wipe with antibacterial and given them a spray with a disinfectant, so they're all nice and clean and free of mite to the best that they can be. They're all looking great. We've got fresh newspaper and all of these. It smells fresh in here, so it's great. So the first thing we're going to do now is look at the pairings. So the first pair we've moved from a 4-foot breeder to a 7-foot flight below is the greenfinch mule pair. We have a yellow Norwich cock to a yellow greenfinch hen. She's a normal hen. The Norwich cock is a clear, so they're in this flight at the moment. And the plan is that we have the perches spaced about 5.5 feet between, and then we have some lower perches as well, so they can do like what I said earlier about the perch spacing, is that they can fly up as well as side to side, which gets many of the muscles exercised in the birds. So I think that'll help, especially with these two being rather larger birds. The second pair we come to is the siskin redpoll hybrid. We have a normal siskin cock who I bred this year. He's a yellow bird to a cinnamon redpoll hen. She is a 2019 hen, and I believe she is a buff bird. So we've had these paired since around October time. They're getting on very well. I've seen them feeding each other several times. We've moved those to a 4-foot breeder now, so we've got a good space between the perchings. So they're going to get fit quite quickly and quite easily there. And we do have the different spacing in height of the perches as well, so that's going to be very good. The third pair we come to is the goldfinch mule pair. We have a 2020 goldfinch cock to a 2019 red-eyed satinette new colour canary hen. This pair's getting on quite well. They're feeding each other no problem. I've seen them feeding each other quite a few times. They don't tend to do it in front of me, so I do have to try and catch them whilst they're not aware of me being there. I've got the spacing between the perches done quite nicely, so that's working well, that we have the differences in height, so the birds are flying up and down like I said earlier, and then also it's just going to help get this pair fit. So these are the pairings which are currently in the small bird room. You know, the smaller bird room, but it's actually, I'm going to be using it for some of the larger finches as well as the hybrid and mule pairs as well. So they're getting on really well, and I'm hoping that over the next 6 weeks, we're going to see a real improvement in the condition of all the birds, and hopefully we might see some breeding starting from the Greenfinch Norwich pair first. Then it'll be the Siskin Redpoll hybrid pair starting to come into condition to go down, and then last it will be the Goldfinch mule pair. The canary hen will be ready earlier, but the goldfinch cock will take a little bit more time, probably into the start of May, before we start to see him fill any eggs for us. So we also have this bird room. Now all the birds in here have been separate several weeks. That is all of the red polls. So we have all of the red poll cocks separate here. We have a cobalt, a normal pied, a normal pastel, a cinnamon pastel, a agate pastel, a normal split cinnamon, split agate, and an Isabel cock. We are getting hopefully 2 more cockbirds in and another hen, all colour variants ideally. In here we have 5 red poll hens, we have 4 cobalts and 1 normal, and down here we have 3 red poll hens, we have 2 cinnamons, 1 normal, and then we have 2 siskin hens which we'll be using later on this year in the breeding season, which are down there with the red poll hens. So that is all these cages cleaned out as well, all got fresh newspaper, fresh food, fresh water. They're all happy, so I'm going to put some baths on for them a little later. So as you've seen, we've moved quite a few birds about today. We've moved all of the hens into one flight, or most of the hens into one flight, and most of the cockbirds into another. Now the reason that we separate them is so that they don't have, if we had them in mixed flights for example, we don't want them to choose their mate and bond with them, because then that would cause us issues further down the line in breeding season when hens aren't squatting for the cock they're paired with, or the cockbird isn't mating with the hen he's paired with. So it's not ideal in that sense. That, you know, the cockbirds aren't threading, the hens aren't squatting if we had them all together. So it doesn't work well in that situation. That's why we separate them, so that when we come to do our pairings, the pairs have been introduced for the first time in at least several weeks. So if you haven't got your birds separate, I would suggest separating them now, unless you already have your pairs picked out. Then by all means keep them paired up, but obviously make sure that you can get them fit. So we have all the cockbirds and all the hens together. I have overwintered some of the birds together, and the reason being is that I only have 1 pair, such as the bullfinches. The bullfinches are only going to breed together, so they're fine. And the same for the goldfinches, the Siberian goldfinches. The cockbird is only going to mate with those 2 hens, and vice versa. It's you know, we aren't going to be having several pairings, but like for the red polls, we're going to have probably 9 pairs of red polls next year. So we do need to keep them separate ideally whilst we get them fit, so that I can make the final pairing judgments a little later on when we come to actually pair them up, just before the breeding season. Well, we'll be looking at about April. About April, for the start of April, is when we plan to pair all of the birds up. So all the birds will be going into their breeding cages or their flights. I'll be decorating all the flights or dressing them, so I will do a video on that once I'm doing it. And they'll all be being paired up then. So I am currently working on the pairings. I have rough ideas of who's going to pair with what. With the red polls, it is going to depend on some of the cockbirds that we get in and the hen that we get in as well, hopefully in the next few weeks, so I can choose the best pairings from that. The greenfinches is very similar. Hopefully we should be getting in another greenfinch cock, a really good quality bird. So it's going to depend on him and actually what I pair with what from then. But for everything else, or most of everything, I know who's going to be pairing to who. The same for the feeder canaries. I'm going to try and keep them with the same breeds as such. So the satinettes are going to stay together, the yellow mosaics are going to stay together, the Norwich are staying together, and then the new feeders we're going to look at a little later are going to be staying together as well, just because we don't want to be making mongrel canaries that could pollute bloodlines unless we are having them strictly for feeders. I think that the best expression we could use for why we separate the birds is separation makes the heart grow fonder. So we've got the birds separated, so actually when you do pair them together, they're more excited to see each other and more likely to breed in that sense. Something I thought would just be beneficial to show you, really. I got these in from Direct Bird Products a few days ago, and they're actually just external bats but much larger, so they're ideal for the greenfinches and the bullfinches. I'm going to have them on for the redpoll hens because we have quite a few of them together. For the birds outside, we obviously have really large water trays for them to bath in. So these are ideal because you can use them for larger birds as well as multiple birds in cages like for the hens, for example, but also they're really ideal as weaning cages. So we can just hook them onto the cage front like that. They've got a door in the front so we can access whatever's in there, and then when we come to weaning youngsters, we can hook them onto the front of the cage so that the parents can still feed them, and they're obviously separated so they aren't trying to bother them off the nest, for example. I just thought that was something interesting to show you. They're really good quality as well, really useful, and a good price. So they're at Direct Bird Products if you are interested. So what sort of time frame are we looking at for the birds outside in the flights? How long are they going to be together? So I'm hoping really within the next 2 weeks we're probably going to be moving most of the canaries into this shed to breed. The canaries are looking quite close, further into condition and closer to the breeding season than the natives at the moment. We have the 2 new colour hens, the 2 new colour cocks. We have the 2 Norwich cocks, 2 Norwich hens. Then we have the feeders. So the plan is that probably about the start of March, I'm going to be bringing in all of the canaries except the Norwich. We're going to start breeding them and ideally probably getting a first round out of them all, which is the plan, to give us some canaries for next year, because for the rest of the season they're going to be our feeder pairs for the redpolls, the siskins, mule and hybrid pairs, and then also the Norwich canaries, because they tend to not feed their youngsters as well. So the canaries will be coming out of there probably within 2 weeks. They're already looking quite good. The cockbirds are singing, the hens are actually starting to carry material, so I'm having to keep a close eye on that. With the rest of the natives, it's going to be about 6 weeks from now that I'll be starting to move them around. We'll start pairing them up at about the start of April to late March. We'll be having all the canaries in here. We'll be having all the redpolls in here. And then for the other shed and the flights, we're going to be having some of the larger finches and, of course, the mule and hybrid pairs as well. So it's just a little bit something different. They won't be in there too long. Obviously, the reason that we can house so many together at one time in those flights, obviously the flights are quite large as it is. There's cover in there for them and plenty of room to get away from the other birds. But also the birds aren't in top breeding condition, so we aren't going to be seeing the aggression that we would if they were in prime condition in the breeding season. Say if we looked at the birds in June, we wouldn't want to be putting them all together in a flight like that. We want them separate, really, in their own pairs, or maybe sharing flights, as we will be doing with a few pairs of natives this year. So it's just something to let you know. They won't be there for too long in the flights together, and at least not when they're being fully aggressive and fully territorial during the breeding season. So you may remember earlier in this video I mentioned that we got some new birds in, so we're going to take a look at them. So to start with, we have these 2 canary cocks. Now we have a yellow bird on the right and a buff on the left. The best way I could describe what these are mongrels. They are, at a guess, Irish cross Fife canaries, and the reason that we've got these in is as feeders, especially the mongrel canaries. They tend to be very good for feeders. So these are the 2 cockbirds we've got in. We've got a clear on a clear buff bird here, and the yellow is slightly ticked on the back of the neck, but very slightly. So that's the 2 cockbirds we've got in. We've got 2 hens. We have a buff on the right, a buff on the left and a yellow on the right. The yellow bird, so which is on your left now at the bottom or at the back of the cage, is a ticked, and the one in the foreground now here is a clear. So these are 2 hens, both last year's. All these birds I'm going to show you are last year's 2020 current year bred. birds. So these are the two hens. Again, 5 cross Irish is my best guess. And then finally we have this hen. So this is a new colour cross. It's actually a fawn hen. So she's a nice bird. I'd say she's probably part satinette by the look on the back. So maybe her mother or her father was a satinette canary. And you know, one of the other parents was one of the 5 cross Irish. So these really are just mongrel canaries, and the reason for getting these in is just as feeder pairs for the native birds and the Norwich. I plan to breed maybe a first round out of all these birds, just so I have some feeders to work with the following year, and can develop a nice line of feeders. But that's the main intention with this. So she's a fawn variegated. As you can see, she has the variegatedness on the back end and on the wings, and slightly on the tail. So just to give you a quick idea, I actually messaged Matt Eld of the Canary Room to ask him about the mutations, because I'm not 100% up to scratch on canary mutations. But I can tell you that this being a fawn, it's basically a cinnamon with a white background, which makes it that. So the plan is that she will actually be pairing to a red poll mule. We looked at several episodes back when we talked about fertile mule and hybrids, because the red poll mule did show signs of being fertile last year when he paired himself up to a crossbill hen. We did get some full eggs, so I am going to be pairing a red poll mule to this hen, and we'll use them as feeders. If not, but we'll also just try and see if that red poll mule is fertile, and I feel that this bird would be the best one to be pairing to. So like I said, the intention for these 3 pairs is to actually have them in the cages down below. They're about 18-inch wide, about 12 inches deep and 12 to 14 inches high. So they're perfect for these feeder pairs. Obviously, we don't need to prioritise the feeder pairs in terms of the size of the cage. I'm just going to put them on some of the lower cages down, because all they're going to be acting as is the feeders for the native finches and of course the Norwich canaries. So that's going to work really nicely, because we're actually going to essentially have 5 pairs of feeders for next year. We're going to have the 2 Irish cross 5 pairs for those mongrels. We're going to have the red poll mule paired to the fawn new colour cross, and then we're going to have the pair of red-eyed satinettes and the pair of yellow mosaics as feeders. So I will let them all go for a first round, so we do have some young canaries to work with next year for feeders again, and we might look at showing some of the new colours. But again, I don't really think they're good enough show quality. I've only got them in for the feeding type, and obviously the red-eyed satinettes, they'll be maybe going to goldfinches further down the line, so that we can get some, well, hopefully get some maybe variegated or clear mules from them. So I'm always cautious when bringing new birds into the bird room, because I don't want to introduce any disease or bring in any mite, or try and bring in as little mite as possible. So what I do is, before I show you guys the birds, I've had them for at least a week prior, because I want to make sure that these birds are getting on fine and they are healthy. I always refuse to buy any bird that shows signs of ill health, because we don't want to be introducing that into our bird rooms. But also, as an added precaution, I give the birds a dose of Frontline. Frontline is a anti-mite, anti-tick spray. It's actually designed for dogs and cats, but if we get a little syringe and just put a drop of that onto the preening gland of the bird, located at the end of the tail, or the start of the tail, the back end of the bird, we drop it onto there, just one single drop, and that'll cover the birds for the next few months for mite, and they preen that and brush that into the feathers, so actually the mite can't really live on those surfaces, and it kills the mite and puts them off. Make sure that if you are going to use this, you don't use it in too many doses, and if you are unsure, please do stay away from it, because I wouldn't want you to lose birds by watching my video and me showing you how to do it. But I would recommend, if you haven't already, watch the video from the Canary Room. It's somewhere up above. on using Frontline. Matt explains it really well and can give you more hints and tips on how to use that, because Matt has a lot more experience using this than myself. So for those pairs of feeders, I got them from a good friend quite locally, so it has worked quite well in that I know the background of the birds and I know how well they're kept, and I know that they're kept very clean. They're always dosed with medication so that they haven't got these diseases, or if they have, they're at bay, for example. So I'm quite confident in that these birds are healthy. So I've quarantined them for the past 2 weeks and given them a dose of Frontline as well, just on the preening gland of the bird, like I mentioned earlier, and I do know the background of the bird, so that's quite good. In terms of when I can expect these to breed, I will be pairing them up around the start of March, as I will be doing also with the new colour canaries. So it's looking in about 2 weeks time we'll actually be pairing those up. They're quite advanced in terms of their condition. They haven't been kept on any artificial light or extended light hours. So they are out in the flights now, just getting fit. I have had them for 2 weeks prior, so I do know that these birds are clear of anything. I've given them some medication as well. I know they're healthy. So really give it 2 weeks time, and then we'll be pairing them up. We'll be getting the nesting for them and trying to get a first round out of them before we start to use them actually as feeders for all the native finches. So that brings us to the end of this week's video. So I do really hope that you have enjoyed this video, and if you have, please do leave us a like. We should be hopefully getting some new birds in relatively shortly. I'm not going to disclose what they are yet. I want to show them in a video, which will probably be coming even maybe next Tuesday, or it could be the Saturday even. But these birds that I'm supposed to be getting are from world champion stock, so it is something to look forward to, and I'll be getting some really nice birds in, which is the plan. I've also got a few really good videos lined up over the next few weeks, and obviously I'm always trying to make sure and improve my content and make sure it's entertaining for you guys. So if you haven't already, please do make sure you hit the subscribe button. That shows me that you've enjoyed this video and that you want to see more, and you get to follow along with all of my future videos and all the future content that I make. If you have enjoyed this video, please leave us a like. That shows me that you've enjoyed it. If you haven't already, please turn the notification bell on so that you get a notification and an update every single time I upload, so you don't miss any of my future videos. And please make sure you share this video with someone who'd be interested in this, getting entertained by this, enjoying the birds, and obviously just seeing how I do things, how I treat new birds as they come in. And then actually just moving your birds out to the flights and how to get them fitter for the breeding season. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.